Topic number 7 is, what does cultural nationalism actually look like for Black people without the Chinese references or communist definition? Do we need to discard aspects of our culture despite the clear interruption of European cultures? Or do we actually need a renaissance? That's a long prompt. Let's try to make those prompts a little shorter so that they can fit in one go. But this came with a link. Takes us to Twitter again. This is from BRG, Black Red God number 1. He says, I keep seeing people talking about cultural revolution and not knowing what it means. Cultural revolution is carried out under the guidance of a communist party with the intent of struggling against old methods during socialism and consciously struggling towards communism. He goes on to say, cultural revolution is not strictly wearing dashikis and changing your name to something in Swahili, though these display rejection of colonizer culture / habits and are generally healthy. It's a class struggle first and foremost. Which road? Capitalism or communism? It goes on to say there are bad elements of new African culture that will be toppled during a cultural revolution. And there will be new and old bourgeoisie to struggle against, probably hiding under pork chop nationalists or neo-Gaviite garb and rhetoric, tied to reactionary lumpen as well. During Cultural Revolution, the masses are mobilized to seize power from reactionary and pseudo-capitalist elements and tear down reactionary old things in favor of communist new things. All right, so that's a thread there, and you see what the prompt is. What does cultural nationalism actually look like for Black people without the Chinese references or communist definition? Do we need to discard aspects of our culture despite the clear interruption by European European intervention? I can't find the last part right now. So with that said, there's already a couple comments. Nama X says, I agree with BRG. It says capitalism is never and will never work for us. Afro Native World says he hates the term quote unquote pork chop nationalist. Nama X says is exactly what has us at the bottom. With that said, let me start off with Carl this time. Carl, what say you to this thread that I just read out here?
Well, my thoughts on this. I kind of feel. I'm sorry. My dog is acting up. Calm down. Sorry. Hold on.
It's all right.
In fact, go ahead and pick somebody else besides me.
All right.
Wait, I actually thought that was gas. I was like, I heard a bitch.
Wow. Boy, you guys, boy. Anyway, let's go to Oni next. Oni, what say you next?
Still laughing at what I said. Nah, first off, I was like, oh shit, a bitch came. Nah, I'm not. All right. What was this? This same guy again. How many times are we gonna hear from Black Guard? who keeps putting up Black Red Guard? But like it is. Yeah, I mean, I actually do like the communists for this though. You know, I like the communists for their understanding of political parties and politics and ideology. Those are actually really important things, you know. Like I said, even like might have been 20 years ago, I don't know, but a long time back, I was going to some socialist meetings, you know, the Marxist Leninist type, and it's a really interesting school. They're really serious about you know, well, I don't want to say they're serious about implementing revolution, but the ways that they try to do it by like forcing people to go through an educational process and only promoting people to positions of leadership after they've studied the fundamental materials, like that is really respectable among the communists. You know, hold on a second. So why I'm saying that is to say that yeah, I mean, what he's saying is technically right. You know, um, if you want a revolution, you do well. The Marxist Leninists. So a lot of people don't know what Leninism is, but why they say Marxist Leninism instead of Marxism or instead of Leninism is that Lenin is talking about, you know, you form these vanguards, you form these people who are studied and who would be the leaders of a revolutionary movement, right? And so and that yeah, they will turn against the internal saboteurs, you know, they will turn against the Ascari, as I call them. They will, you know, inside the African context, we would turn against those people because those people are like you said, you know, they will see what you're doing and hate on it. They will see you and hate on you, and you would say, well, what do you accomplish? They don't have anything to say. They just I'm secret. Yeah, of course you're secret. You know, I would keep my accomplishment secret too if I ain't have none. You know what I'm saying? But why I'm saying that is to say that yeah, the communists understand, like they understand it. They understand, like shout out to, you know, homeboy, you know, the importance of teachers. You know, they understand the importance of teachers, but of course you want teachers not state teachers, not teachers that operate under the, you know, the current order, the status quo. You want revolutionary instructors, you know, real educators, not, you know, people who say they're educators. But I'm saying a lot of shade, right? I'm saying this to say, yeah, I mean, but as far as, but that's where I would stop. I would say, hey, look, yes, we do need to emphasize political parties. We do need to emphasize our own unique economies, but we cannot, you know, have that be the Europeans' economic model or the Europeans' economic vision for the world. You know, the thing that people don't really grasp is that communism is an economic vision that should not be implemented over African people. You know what I mean? Like it should not be implemented over African people. And that's what it really comes down to. So we should have Africans implementing our own economic philosophy. But like, here's where everything kind of comes to a stop, you know, because one thing about us is that we tend to, so like, for instance, like I said, if I write a book, people are going to find some reason not to read it. You know what I mean? And that's how it is for a lot of our people, where it's kind of like we do have this heavy emphasis on people who have died, you know, which is okay to some degree, but we also have this heavy emphasis on misinformation, you know. So I mean, just to give a like, I shouldn't. Well, you guys get what I'm saying. There's a lot of misinformation out there. So if you do have, so what we're going to always run into, we're going to run into this for like 20, 30, 50, 100 years, is black people are going to say, well, what kind of economic philosophy should we try to implement? And well, who's gonna, you know? But then if you give them, you know, your books, or you give them some books, you give them anything, they're like, I'm not reading that person. I'm not reading that. That person's not dead. You know what I'm saying? like that's not an ancestor. That's just, you know, that's you or something. You know what I mean? And so yeah, we're at a standstill. I agree with how the freaking Marxists, Leninists are doing it. Like they're really recruiting young people, getting them to read the literature that they recommend, and they're getting them into positions. I could actually respect it. I saw one of the sisters, I used to crush on her back in the day. I saw one of the sisters in that old socialist political party I used to be a part of, and she's still with them, you know, and they promoted her pretty high. You know, you could read her in the newspapers and stuff, right? And I mean, that would have been me if I, you know, wanted to stick around, but I didn't. But because I was like, let me go to the black side or whatever, right? But you know, uh, yeah, like he's like the socialists are technically right. You do have to really try to educate people. The trouble with us as a people is that we don't want to be educated by the next person. We have the problem of too many chiefs and not enough Indians. You know what I mean? We have the problem where, you know, you can clearly outclass a guy intellectually and he will still call you an idiot. Why? No idea. But that's a thing. And that's a thing that's prevalent in our African circles. Like even another person was like, you can't tell me anything about history. And it's like literally, you know, one of the historians, like I don't know if you guys even picked up on it. So my man's, I mean, I shouldn't take credit for this, but I might as well. My man's I got this brother on Twitter. Good, like this is like we don't want my brother. You know what I'm saying? Brother from another mother. And I'm saying that now because he was just whooping ass. No, I'm just saying he was just whooping ass, right? And I mean, this is a dude like me and him cool. You know what I'm saying? Now people gonna say cap, but still, me and him cool, right? Nah, for real, like for real, behind the scenes, me and him cool, right? And and that said, you know, like for you to come at me, like just off proximity, like I know my history. You know what I'm saying? Like, just off proximity, because you see how this brother whipping these crackers, right? Like where how this boy, like where how he whipping these crackers just off proximity. I'm gonna say I got that kind of like I taught him that left hook. You know what I'm saying? I'm just saying like that.
If you're not aware, I've mentioned the brother. I've reposted some of his tweets on the community tab. His brother Great House. Yeah, he was really this last week or so. He was really handling them white folks on history, man. Only have you ever invited that brother to come through on the panel?
Yeah, I mean, long time back, he got his he's interesting. He
Oh,
gets invited by everybody on the planet, but he's a good guy. He's a good guy, but it is what it is.
yeah. I hope one day we don't find out he's a white boy.
Nah,
But
nah, 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 nah.
no, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But yeah, I'm sure he's in demand. Because all Omawali Africa and all them guys be retweeting his stuff. So he's good. He's good. I like to hear his perspective on things sometime. And I'm sure you guys in the chat, if you know who Great House is, drop a one. Shout out to that bro. I think he does listen in sometimes to the show, but I'm not certain. By the way, speaking of that, you guys make sure to let's be intentional. Let's bring a one or two people in to come through. I try to invite folks. Folks don't respond to my emails, but let's try to bring one or two folks in to join the panel, join the chat. You know what I mean? A couple of you know who Great House is. Real Black Gentleman says Great House is thorough. I peeped him a while back, so that's good. Um, who did I not get to yet? I got Carl right.
I'm
Let's go.
back. Yeah, I had to interrupt, but I'm back. I had to take old boy out, but we good now.
Okay, Carl, go ahead.
Okay, so to answer the question about cultural revolution, um, I don't think we need a communist party for cultural revolution. I mean, there's so many similarities within African cultures. Now, there's differences too, but I think that we have similarities in such that we don't need um, a communist revolution. I don't think that, now there may be some aspects of our culture that needs to be discarded. And I think that one of the aspects we got to discard is our xenophilia. Some cultures are xenophobic. We are xenophilic. We love strangers. Every time I cut on my goddamn phone or TV, is asking about who we're gonna invite to the damn cookout. You know, no more of that. No more of that. I understand that's a maladaptation to certain things, but there may be some aspects of our culture that have made us vulnerable to outside incursions, and we're gonna have to purge that. How do we purge that? I don't know. When Mao took over China, he purged the landlords. You know, how did he do it? He had the tenants kill them all. I don't think we need to go that far. So I do think, but as far as just eradicating people, but there are some elements of of African culture that's going to have to get the fuck out. We cannot continually let certain things go down. Every race of people has traitors, but for some reason we don't seem to punish our traitors the way other groups do. So we're going to have to purge certain elements. I would like to think we can purge it through education, through ostracization if we need to. I believe some people need to be banished. But we don't need to go the route that Mao did, his great leap forward, which actually caused more damage to not just the Chinese people, but to their environment as well. China has some of the most polluted air, some of the most toxic water on earth. We don't want to replicate that. So I do think we have um, some adjustments to our culture. It doesn't have to be done through communism. I mean, although I don't see the need to where we just have to continuously focus on just these narrow definitions of what some white person has done. We have within our own culture to come up with some of the things that we need. All right, so I'll stop there.
I appreciate.
I didn't speak yet.
Yeah. Jose, go ahead.
I wanna add to Carl's word words, and that's let's be social amongst us, and the capitalistic on the world stage of the many variations of power, economic, military, spiritual, intellectual, etc. National socialistic is to me, it's still the solution. We all agree that we need to learn to love each other, right? We close the fences, and we introduce ourselves to each other, and outside of the house. So let's say Africa is the house, right? Yeah, we need to deal with some of us quote unquote up north, but let's call Africa the house, right? And when somebody in Africa says it's time to close the windows in the door, all the windows in the doors need to be closed and stay closed, and that's what Carl was talking about, right? What's the word? Xenophilia. Yeah, we need to deal with each other. We need to introduce ourselves to each other, but also we need to make to each other clear who is we when we say we, and who is them when we say them, and who is you when we talk to, who makes it to the second person. For first person is we, and that needs to be made clear. We need to make clear who makes it to the second person, right? Who makes it to the you, and it needs to be clear who is them, and that's very problematic. So that's why we need to, for a while we need to close the doors and the windows, but eventually we have to pick the yous out of them, right? And yeah, uh, I believe. I believe China is a better partner, but China and Russia are better partners than, and eventually it's not even China and Russia. Our colonizer is pointing his finger to China and Russia. So the conversation is about China and Russia, but actually the conversation is the whole world. The choice that the West gives us is either deal with them or nobody, and yeah, that's a no, of course. And if you say no to them, you got the whole world to yeah, as client. Since we are the shop, yeah, you got the whole world as client. Note that I did not mention any of those political terms, right? Because we have to get rid of them, because the moment that you mention only one of those terms, or those people that led some revolutions here in Europe, yeah, fuck all of that. Yeah, we need, yes, we need to start with a clean sheet. Yeah, that's what I believe. And with the only pressure, or the only thing that we need to remember is the we, the you, and the them. That's if you ask me. Everything else needs to be reinvented, because the UN doesn't care about nomads. The UN doesn't care about our tribes being divided by colonial borders, etc. So none of these terms actually make sense to us. And I yield the mic.
I appreciate that, Jose, and I agree with a sentiment you were trying to get across in there too, which is, and I've heard Oni say this too, in a tweet. We we might have to get away from some of these terminologies, because when I mention capitalism, right? When I say Gavi said that capitalism is probably your best bet, everyone thinks I'm talking about some, I'm trying to oppress some child somewhere with some slave labor or something like that. No, like Jose said, I think we on the world stage we got to compete, and that's what they do on the world stage. I think internally though, we need to have a system that's more social towards our people. But forward as far as the world stage, we have to be just like, unfortunately, right? We have to be just like everyone else with the thing, with our intentionality, to protect ourselves, to have power. We have to get in the game. So I appreciate that, Jose. I have a follow-up question for all of you, but let me get through everyone first. Real Black Gentleman, what say you?
I guess cultural nationalism. I know, what I'm saying, there's a lot of nuance behind that. You know what I'm saying? It's just, it's just a nation. What's a nation? Just your country, your homeland or whatnot, about a culture, you know what I'm saying? But culture alone is kind of what, I'm saying, is honestly, that's alone can't be your main, you know, industry, as it were. I mean, just culture, just, just describing how we go about. I mean, industry can be part of a culture. I mean, culture is a very broad kind of a term that is very nebulous at times, and usually when it's usually defined in a very narrow sense. Culture, you might talk about like music or entertainment, when culture can literally mean how, what I'm saying, how the way that sidewalks are, how people drive on which side of the street, or language, and the ways of life. So culture is very, very broad. I mean, in natural, I mean, I think it winds up being like an oxymoronic kind of a term. I mean, I think we try to describe that way in the disparaging way. It's like, oh, I'm not that. That's cultural nationalism. I'm something else. I'm not that. And it's just, that doesn't really get anybody anywhere. And that's just how I feel about that term. I know what people mean when they say it, but it doesn't get anyone anywhere. It's just very describing a very indescribable kind of a thing. I mean, naturally, culture isn't something very tangible. It's not like, I mean, that's like that's like saying soft power. Cultural nationalism is soft power, yo. You know what I'm saying? If you want to break it down to something simple, yeah. And as far as again, like, I'm, I want to say this. I just bring this, Jose. I mean no offense. I mean no offense. You have like suggested national socialism. Now the first thing I think about national socialism is the Nazi Party. That's just me. And I can understand how they were really fascist, right? I get that. But I do think that as far as Black people, the socialism we need is more of a socialism of making sure everyone has a basic, and then everything else is free for people to compete on various different levels. You got to have a basic for people, but you do have to allow people who can compete and who are able to do beyond the basic and can do what it is they can do with whatever various resource in that nation for whatever benefit. They should be allowed to excel. And I mean, that's my thing. It's basically the idea of, you don't want a total welfare state where everything is divided equally, or laissez-faire. Well, if you get it, you can get it. If you take it, you take it. You do have to have a basic, but even at the same time, that basic can't necessarily almost be guaranteed. It has to be understood that there is a basic and that the basic will exist, but sometimes that basic may be more, maybe less. There's still impetus of people to go out and enterprise and do what they have to do. I think has to be, because a person who innovates a solution that benefits multiple people in and of itself is a net benefit to everyone. Even though that person may come out ahead by, utilizing the resource, and maybe very relatively resource intense to go through that innovation, crop yields, industry techniques to improve efficiency. You do have to have people who are out there studying, trying to, get ahead on the next day. You have to allow people to try to see how they compete against the next guy, and if they can do it a little better, you have to allow that. They can always be reined in a little bit, and sometimes the brakes fall off, and you have to put the brakes back on. I don't want to stifle what when people say capitalism, because to me capitalism is just an individual's perspective of thinking, using your thinking cap, your head. Your capitalism is how I you use your head to get ahead, or you use your head to get over. And you don't want to get over on people in a everyday sense, but in competition you're trying to get over on people. But it doesn't have to be cutthroat. It just has to be, I got over on you. And I mean, it's recognized in a sense. You know what I'm saying? I got to sell before you. You're not going to go back and try to unsell it. You know what I'm saying? I got to sell before you. You know what I'm saying? That's how I see things. But at the end of the day, everyone, has a bed, you know what I'm saying? Everyone, you know what I'm saying? Everyone's making sure, you know what I'm saying, the sheets, you know what I'm saying, there's good water, everyone has their basic. Everyone, I mean, a lot of the richest people in the world don't live off a basic, because they're just like, I don't need much. I just gonna go ahead, have my tools wherever I had to go out here and capitalize and and go out here and enterprise and do it and make those connections and networks and do it and come home with it and eat basic. That's how you do it. A lot of wealthy people live basic. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, I wanna add something. Yeah. When I brought up National Socialism, I want before starting. I remember warning in the chat that the term National Socialism triggers a lot, because we have been programmed by all this gassing the Jews and exterminating the uh, I lost the term, but people in wheelchairs and mentally disturbed people, etc. But that has nothing to do with National Socialism, right? That's their race. All the atrocities that they did is not connected to National Socialism. So the term National Socialism is being smudged by these people. But there's nothing wrong with National Socialism. But again, uh, shake off what we have learned about the Second World War and what happened in Germany. National Socialism is what we all describe when we speak of Marcus Garvey or even the Black Panthers. Okay, the Black Panthers were just socialists, right? It was not as black as they try to make it look nowadays, because they are anti-communist and socialist. So they try to push socialism in black hands, like everything they deem negative. They try to slide it into our business. But anyway, yeah. Again, socialism among us and cutthroat with others.
Yeah, I can't knock that, Jose. Yeah, I think we need to look out for all of us. But when we face these other people, we need to be just as cutthroat as they are. Now my ex put me on to something I didn't know. He said in Kemet they had an important economic system called negative interest on money. This way, you don't have an oppressive rich class, since the money you get at the end of the week decreases in value. I didn't know that. He said Kemet had a socialist type arrangement. Let's hear from Tans. Did I hear from Tans on this one?
No.
Go ahead, Tan.
Well, for me, I hesitate, putting modern labels on old practices. Sometimes we take things and we say, oh, when I read Kemet was socialist, I was like, that's an interesting way to put it. I think the principle is what is the end? It doesn't matter what the means is, and I think with socialist capital, all those things is simply a means to the end. If the end is to take care of people, not to get biblical or anything, or but in religions they all have one thing in common: this idea of charity. It's not just it's common in all religions that you're supposed to give back for the widows, the orphans, the people in the community. So the idea behind it is that everyone is supposed to be taken care of. So with that idea, it does not matter if you're a Christian, Catholic, or a Protestant, or whatever it is. The idea that when you're part of that group, you should be taken care of, one way or another. Whether that happens in reality, that's a different thing. But the idea is that everyone should uh, feel that they should be taken care of. If they cannot take care of themselves, that's the other, caveat. It's not just, putting out your hand and then getting something for free. So that principle is common both to capitalism and to socialism. There's neither of those systems say, oh, you can just sit back and get, and get benefits without working for them. In the capitalist system, you have to make a profit. In the socialist system, you have to work and contribute to the general good, unless you're somewhat, like Jose said, disabled. So the principle is what matters, rather than the system that you achieve it. And for us as Africans, it, I I am reluctant to to name things and point things out. It's like calling what how people Africans worshipped religion. It wouldn't be fair. It wouldn't be quite accurate to call it a religion any more than, for me, I would think that we had some kind of system for politics and economics and all this. I think we did what worked. We first of all started with the fundamentals, feeding the people. So agriculture, keeping animals, taking care of the family, the children, all of that stuff. And then if you had more, you'd maybe get to it. And yet, the system that we live in, it's like you make money first and then you feed yourself. So food is the second necessity to getting paper money. But in any case, I think that the focus should be on the principle of what we want for the people. What we have right now is that you have to deserve to live. Almost, you have to justify your existence, and on top of that, you have to pay for it. No one has the right to simply live by living, and if you cannot afford to live, you will be cast off, into into dire circumstances, and those circumstances are very real for a lot of people. So if we are really Africans, is we have to choose whether do people deserve to to live, or do they have to pay for it, or should people be taken care of no matter what. And I would think that the African way was the one that everyone, especially those who are most vulnerable, should be taken care of. That's why we had this basic familial system where children, there was not an orphanage system, but there was a familial system of not even formal adoption, where people just took care of the children of their family. That was one way, and elderly people are also taken care of, and so on and so forth. So I think that if we created a system that would work for us, it would be based on a family based model. It would be based on community. Whether you call that socialism or capitalism or whatever, it would be based on hard work being rewarded, laziness being discouraged, and and punishment should not be you know um, it should be rehabilitative, but also away from the community. Anyway, sorry, I did go. Oh, you said that number X said, did you know that for capitalism to work, there has to be a perpetual bottom class? Yes, that is the negative aspect of capitalism, unfortunately. But the fundamental aspect of the positive aspect of it, that you can make money by your efforts and by making a profit from convenience, and I think that's a positive aspect of it. So yeah. So that's my summary.
I think I think that's a good reminder that we as Black folks need to get out from the bottom. We need to compete. We need to compete. We need to get out from the bottom. Let's let any other group be at the bottom. Let these Latinos and them be at the bottom. But we need to get up from up under the bottom, and we need to really and truly we need to go back to our homeland and make shit happen. That's really what it's coming down to. Trigger Happy 262 came across the same understanding that I had when Nama X was talking about Kemet and socialism. What Nama described as that negative interest thing, I can't find the tweet, the comment now, but yeah, it sounds like Gaviism. Gaviism had this thing, like I said a few weeks back, that he wanted to compete, so he competed in this capitalist system. But the way the UNIA was organized, it was organized in such a way where the wealth was distributed or redistributed, evenly amongst the organized. And I think that's what we're not getting into. We're not organizing this shit to compete and then bring back the gains and spread it out amongst our people. I think we're not doing that. But before I ask my follow up question, let's hear from Buana, and then I'll ask the follow up. Go ahead, Buana.
Yeah. So in listening to the conversation and the dialogue, at first two things like stood out at me in terms of the comments that was made. Before I get to the whole the idea of cultural nationalism, one said that everyone deserves a bed, and I don't particularly believe that. I believe that if a man gives you a bed or pays for a bed, one day he may come back and sleep in it with you. Because he has a right to that bed just as you do. But also the idea of everyone deserves to live, I kind of contend with that idea too, because life for me. Well, life is a fight. Life is a fight. You fight for your meal. You fight for your meal to put inside your body for you to take breath. And if you sit down and do nothing, no one is supposed to come to you and ensure that you eat every day or drink water. You have to ensure that for yourself. You have to take action in ensuring that life or preserving that life. So this idea of deserving a life, no, 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 no. If you make your life desirable when you do something to ensure that life is sustained, and the only person who could say you deserve life probably is your mama, your mother, and everyone else. They don't have the same kind of interest in mind. So you should have your own interest in yourself to preserve that life and ensure the continuation of that life in doing things to ensure that life is preserved. You know what I mean? Which is finding food, finding a meal, finding warmth to ensure that body don't decay out in this cold world. So you must do certain things to ensure that life is continuous and functioning. But in terms of cultural nationalism, the whole idea of culture is what people actually do habitually, what a person does habitually, and as a nation is what people is known to do or actually does habitually. And when I say that, for instance, the Jews, when people talk about the Jews, what are their society and nation known for as a culture? They're known for being extremely studious. I think per capita they have the largest amount of PhDs in the world. They known for being doing business. What now we could contend whether that's good business practices or not good business practices. They known for keeping being heavy on money and keeping their money within their communities. You look at the Japanese. People say the Japanese are extremely precise. They extremely disciplined. You go into their societies, and in some parts they're very very clean. In terms of the outside of the societies as well. The infrastructure. You know, you know. But if you look at our society, our black communities, not all of them, but if you go through the length and breadth of our black communities, what are we known for? So, in looking at our societies and in terms of culture, what we actually practice on a habitual basis is that competitive in the global world, where we are trying to compete with everyone else. And if not, then we should be willing to let go of some things and then we should be also be willing to keep some things as well, because there are some things we have gotten right, and I think that that's not necessarily acknowledged within our communities, because there are some things we do, within Black society, globally, that we have gotten right. This is the reason why, in some instances, in some industries, people look at us in awe. You know what I mean? In terms of music, in terms of being celebratory, in terms of in terms of even athleticism, in some instances, in terms of study, in terms of being effective at certain things, there are certain things we have gotten right. But unfortunately, there are other things we have gotten wrong. So should we let go of some things? Absolutely. Should we keep some things to remain competitive? I think we should. We should build on the things that keeps us competitive globally. But I think that we should be willing to let go of some things if we want to exist up into the 22nd and the 23rd and the 24th century. Like, because as we saw today with the prompt, the last prompt, the Chinese known for 100-year plans, 100-year planning far ahead to ensure that when their children's children doing something in the future, at least they'll have a leg up. Are we doing the same kind of things? Maybe not. Is that something that we should implement in a very on a day-to-day, or almost on a habitual level? Absolutely, absolutely. So I just think that, when I look at the terms of cultural nationalism, things we do or are known to do as a nation of people, there are some things we have gotten right. There are some things we have not necessarily gotten right. There are some things we could keep. There are some things we should throw away. I'll stop there.
Yeah, I appreciate you. I appreciate your response, Buana, because it leads right into the follow up question I want to ask before we move on to topic 8 tonight. Because there is something in this prompt that's very direct, right? What does cultural nationalism really look like for African folks? So I just want to ask you guys, any and all of you can respond in any order. What would you like to see this revolution in our culture, like the cultural product after the revolution? What would you like to see? Just a few things, a handful of things that you'd like to see as a part of our culture to
Well,
make us competitive.
for me, I would say we have to eliminate uh, any religious belief that came from outside of Africa. So that means any Judeo-Christian, Islamic, that has to go, because I think that is one of our biggest hurdles. Is that the religion that was given to us, that was forced on us by our oppressors? That's got to be that's got to be removed. So any type of cultural nationalism, cultural revolution has to remove foreign religions from our culture. The biggest statue of Jesus is in Africa, not Europe. I think it was Dr. John Henry Clark who said that African people are the true believers. We will out Pope the Pope. We will out Muhammad. So any type of cultural revolution that I could imagine is going to have to eliminate any type of uh, Judeo-Christian, Islamic, Buddhist, all that nonsense stuff. It's got to be removed from our culture, because it's destroying us. We can't even mentally, intellectually get around it. It's such a hindrance to us. So that's how, at least in my opinion, that would be something I would like to see dealt with during the Cultural Revolution. Man, y'all acting up in the chat, man. Y'all chill out.
Anybody else want to respond to the follow up question I just asked?
Yes, I would like to respond.
Go ahead.
I think that if I would like to see anything implemented, I would like to see intelligence become cool again, and intelligence become a thing within our culture. And what I mean by that is, I think I heard somewhere where the Africans used to say that ignorance is evil, and in the Western Black societies, we consider ignorance to be bliss. And I think that that's one of the things that needs to be popularized again. The person getting straight A's in the classroom, the person who is clever and articulate. You know what I mean? I think that that needs to be promoted more rather than the person who just coming from I come from the ground. I come from the mud. You know what I mean? But I was able to garner a lot of money selling dope. I think that what needs to be cool again is intelligence. You know what I mean? And not necessarily, you don't even have to be not in a formal way. In academia, you could be an autodidactic person, but intelligent, where black people surround you and accept you and appreciate your intelligence. I think that that's one of the things that I would like to see. Another thing too is, and I'll end here because I want to be brief. I think that trust amongst us, as a collective. I think that that's what I would like to see within our community. That trust we had, well, if we ever had it for one another, I think that that's what needs to be restored. You know what I mean? I don't think that we have enough trust. I think there's always this idea of this nefarious thing when we do business with one another. Oh, this guy is a scammer. This guy trying to get over. And there are scammers out there. There are sincere scammers out there, but there are also people who really want to do good. And I think that that level of trust needs to be reprised within our communities, because that's the only way I feel that we'll be able to really build strong binds and bonds within our community. But those two things, intelligence and trust.
I appreciate that, Buana. Anyone else want to add their thoughts
Sorry.
on one
What
of
was the
the?
question again? Apparently I have time. I'm telling you, man, my man's expired. He had time this week. I'm gonna have time today. But what was the question? What was the question?
Well, my follow-up question was, what do we want to see in our culture? What do we want to remove from our culture, I guess?
Oh well, shit. I might as well tie it in with the chat. Um, you know, there is cultism. You know, it's like this dude's saying he didn't see Tariq for what he was. Now, if you were in the community, if you were active in the community, right, you would know what Tariq was the moment you saw his face. But what happens is people who don't do things, and that's another thing too. It's like people love talkers. People love, and I'm saying this because Marcus Garvey talked about it, and Carter G. Woodson talked about it. They said that there were people who are just like straight up grifters, and they document this thing. But like I said, a lot of people do not read. They don't want the scholars of the past. You know, they there's this, like, I think people should really look into what's it called? Marcus Garvey's Philosophies and Opinions, right? Philosophy and Opinions of Marcus Garvey. At one point, he has this article about what he calls yellow journalism. And he's saying that there are journalists during the time when he came to America who only talk about black crime, only talk about what black people are doing wrong, only talk about what black people are doing bad. And Garvey's like, those are not good people for our race. But what we should do is we should have people who are talking about the good of our race, the good that we could do, the good that we are doing, the good that is to be done. And he's like, none of the other African American papers want to do that. You know? So he comes out with the Negro World, and he's countering the essentially the negative propaganda against our people. Right? And what happens is that when you go on social media, you got your Tommy Sotomayor, and you got your your Tariq Nasheed, and you got so on and so forth, and you got tons of idiots following them. Even that woman, I can't remember her name, but she's like, kill the black boys or something like that. Like, you got a bunch of idiots following them.
Cynthia G, that's her name.
What's her name? Cynthia, yes.
G, yeah. Know your enemy, man. Know your enemy.
Yeah, right? Michelle, right? But like, you have that, and like, black folk eat it up, and then finally they're like, oh wait, this person was grifting me? And then they're like, well, it's like, you should have known from jump. I've seen Tommy Sotomayor. Like I never watched this shit, but I've seen him like I want to say 10 years ago or some shit, right? I seen Tariq Nasheed. I seen Kevin Samuels. One of my dudes showed me Kevin Samuels, and I listened for 2 seconds, right? And I was like, nah, this motherfucker's an idiot. And they're like, how do you call me an idiot? He's entertaining and he's blah blah. And it's like, nah, he's a fucking grifter idiot. He's fucking like clearly he hates black women and some shit, right? Clearly there's something wrong with him. Clearly he's not an intelligent person. But that's really the issue with us as a people, that you're supposed to, like one of the things you should be able to figure out is whether the next man is intelligent or not. I had a man call me an idiot today. Like, what kind of a fucking genius do you have to be to call me an idiot? You know what I mean? A guy, and I'm not even like on that, oh, well, I got these degrees and shit. But like for real, don't nobody call me an idiot. Like, where does that even make sense? Or another dude was like, oh, you don't even know history. Like who in their right mind would make that judgment of me and then in the same breath say, well, Tariq Nasheed was repeating Dr. Carter. Like, what are you, like, on what planet? And that's what I'm saying. Like, I guess, in a sense, we go to Du Bois, and I don't like Du Bois. Du Bois, whatever, right? But one of the things Du Bois said was like, the tragedy of our age is that men don't know men. And I want to say that, on that note, it's like, you have to be able to just read people. I mean, if you're going to try to insult somebody, you can say something, but if you like the trouble with us is that we would follow a certified idiot, certified pimp, certified grifter, and praise their name, and then see, we'd actually bump into a actual scholar, not to toot my own horn, but like I am, right? An actual scholar, and be like, well, you a dumbass, like the world went upside down type shit, like the world went upside down. So what I would like for black people is, one, you got to get out of these fucking cults. Two, you have to be able to discern character. I mean, I get that, maybe some people are offended that somebody else went to a country they're not even in to, do something they don't particularly approve of based off of their notion of what should be done. But again, like I said, I was just doing what the locals were doing because I'm a foreigner. That said, just like, like if you're a foreigner, you just do what the locals do. But that said, I kind of wish, I kind of think black folk need to do that. On the other hand, though, I also say, obviously, reacquaint yourself with the historical narrative, like reacquaint yourself with critical thinking. Like I said, if you read like the first dynasty of Kemet, you'll see that there was this clear class differential, like clear classism, right? Clearly, right? And then but if you don't actually read history, right? And I shouldn't really doubt anybody's history, but my history was doubted, so might as well, right? But if you actually read history, then when somebody tells you some bullshit like, hey, countries, so like, no, come on. There's no way you can walk into these hugely opulent, hugely wealthy enterprises and say that was an example of socialism, because that's exactly not an example of socialism. Now, I'm not going to call it a capitalist country either, obviously, for obvious reasons, but again, I think that critical thinking, I think that cultism is a thing. I think that people not being able to understand that name calling is nice and everything, but at least get your facts right, and I guess another thing is just the disassociation from reality. Like I think a lot of us have to just get reassociated with reality. And I'm using that word. It's not a word that we usually throw around and people might associate it with some Zungu thinking or something. It's not. It's realistically just, in fact, actually, if you look at ancient Kemet literature, they really stressed understanding reality, right? In fact, I think the definition for intelligence that somebody came up with was along the lines of being able to discern reality, But honestly, we have to get back to, well, what is in front of you? Like, what is important, and how do we get to that? But Until then, we're gonna have like just jokers and clowns who are, one, following jokers and clowns, or following the message from jokers and clowns, or two, they're like, I'm gonna sabotage you because you're doing something and I'm not, just some dumb shit. And it's like, I'm used to it. I've gotten death threats, a lot. You know what I'm saying? I'm okay with it at this point. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? I'll just get them first if it comes to it. That's it.
All right. I think I got everyone on that one. Let's go to Shoot the Breeze topic number 8. Good conversation. I know the chat is a little wild tonight, but it happens. It's entertaining. I wish more people were here to take it in. There's some good conversation, good analysis from you guys on the panel. I appreciate all of you.